All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's August 11th, 2021. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team while showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered, so feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. Our call today is recorded. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support us, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. So we'll also follow up with an email so you can share that with your team. So today, let's get started with the announcements. Lots of things has come across my radar this past week. One of the interesting ones I thought was the ability to now set organization-wide or cross-account CloudWatch alarms. This is nice from an observability perspective and being able to alert on events happening across perhaps all accounts within an organizational unit. Or if you want to have aggregates of events across accounts, I believe this is another way that it can happen, basically composite alarms. This is something like we've wanted to be able to do in Datadog, and there's no ability right now to have composite metrics across Datadog accounts in an organization. So here's a one-up on Amazon CloudWatch. Not that there's that many. Anything to add to that one? Some other interesting use case? All right.
One of the, oh, sorry, Eric, I was just.
Yeah, go for it, Matt.
One of the things that I thought it could be useful for was in a security context.
Yeah.
Like, because people can disable CloudWatch alarms in their own account, but if they have some sort of centralized security account that monitors like things in other accounts that they don't want people to tamper with, as an example, that might be one one use of this kind
checks
of
and balances.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I thought that was interesting.
Security in depth. So that's cool. Any other interesting use cases for it? All right. Another article I came across, I don't know how new or old it is. I think it was on Hacker News this week, and I added it to my list. I liked it because it just goes to show that best practices themselves morph over time, and holding on to what some of the best practices were when we maybe started computer science and designing and implementing systems maybe aren't the right ones to hold on to today. I thought this was an interesting one because, I got started back in the day as a sysadmin working with Squid and deploying those proxy servers. And one of the amazing things about Squid was all the optimizations it did for how to, effectively manage an LRU cache between memory and disk. But now if you take some of those same considerations in a service and implement them, you're actually fighting the operating system. You're fighting the scheduler and what it does really well. So changing some of the ways you would architect it gives you simpler, more manageable code and easier to maintain, therefore. I thought that was an interesting one. The other article was, I think we got a shout out here. Majin, are you on the call today?
Yep.
Awesome. So you did a talk at Defcon, right? I think I said the wrong thing there. Defcon 21, but Defcon 29. And you were talking about basically some of the attack vectors within Terraform. And had a successful talk on that. We'll share a link to your talk. Any highlights from that you'd want to point out or share?
One thing that Hashiko is planning to have a fix for the remote code execution, which is kind of a non-issue since I thought this since I think April 2021, but apparently it's for years. I remember when you posted about that one with Atlantis.
Yeah.
But hopefully there will be a fix soon. What I'm trying to do now is to try to write a tool to parse the HTML code and then be able to like alert for rogue providers. Like if someone is executing a rogue provider, then this
That'd be
would
kind
be
of
a
cool.
way, yeah, to detect. But still, like prevention is not there.
That ties in maybe to a question Michael had, but hold on, let's pause for a second because I think I didn't give enough maybe context for everyone. So let's see where to begin. So, you know, as we all know and love, Terraform as a tool is great for infrastructure as code. It has this concept, this pluggable architecture, right, where you have providers, and providers are how you extend Terraform into other clouds. And basically, providers are written in Go and have the full power of Go at their disposal. Anything you could do with Go, you can basically do with a custom provider that you write. And by default, Terraform allows you to refer to providers very easily in Terraform code and Terraform modules. And in fact, Cloud Posse has a number of good providers now that we provide that do not do remote code execution for nefarious purposes. But that doesn't mean that somebody else can't do this in a provider. Much the same way we've seen in the NPM, in the Node ecosystem, there's been some modules that have fallen prey to some bad actors who either injected something into them for like Monero mining or worse. I think there's been some cases of like Bitcoin private key getting compromised that way and whatnot. So Terraform honestly is in the same category because of providers. Modules too even technically have a pretty wide attack surface. So Majin brought something to light which, you know, has been starting to get a little bit more attention as Terraform becomes a more mainstream language and adopted in enterprises throughout. So there was a issue that I opened up on, gosh, like in 2018 against Atlantis. How it's asinine to me that in Atlantis they wouldn't accept this ability. Can we look? We know that this problem exists in Terraform and using Terraform in a CI/CD context. So can we please just get this allow list capability? Like, this is a small ask, but we got so much pushback from it, and I don't get it. So if you run Atlantis in your organization today, anybody with access to that GitHub repo that can open a pull request can totally own your organization today. Whatever your Atlantis server has permissions for, they can do it. Doesn't matter what, if there's an approval or anything, it can basically get owned if you have auto plan enabled. So that's what this was showcasing, was how easy it is to, here's an example of just using data, which is a built-in data external built-in provider in HashiCorp to exfiltrate the password file. I know the password file is meaningless these days, but just hear me out. And then exfiltrating that to some generic URL, which, you know, some attacker can watch. So Majin, you did a much more elaborate example of doing this and how it's bad. So what you're saying, Majin, would be something about how we can try and shift left and catch this earlier in the CI process before something like Atlantis or whatever catches it. And that ties me into maybe Michael's question, just jumping ahead, but Michael was asking, do you have any tips, suggestions, pointers on creating plugins for tflint? So would this be something that fits in as a plugin for tflint and maybe not a new tool?
Wow, I haven't heard about tflint before, but this sounds like a good idea. And does tflint run on the pre-commit or on the CI pipeline?
And it can run wherever you want to run it.
Yeah, exactly.
Then
So
yeah,
both
this would be great. If there's if you combine it with alerting, like with Slack, if the test fails with this particular plugin, then you would get an alert for security team about this.
Yeah.
This would be perfect.
Does tflint doesn't already support like a trusted list of providers? Because that seems like a natural thing to have for tflint as well, or tfsec.
I don't think that tfsec has it, but
I bet there's also a way to use the Terraform CLI config to
config inspect. You mean? Or
no. The actual like Terraform like CLI configuration where you can do like developer overrides for where you want to install plugins from. I bet with the right combination of include and exclude, you could only include the providers that you opt into and exclude everything else, like basically black hole them so that you would say install them from a local directory, and then if it tried to install it, it would 404 because they didn't exist because they weren't on your list of providers that you said are okay to install from, from the original source. So I bet I could hack up a quick proof of concept on that and post it somewhere for next week.
That's kind of
that would be
interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah. Something like this, I think, is gonna. I bet we are going to see some announcements coming out for securing what providers you can pull from by default. I mean, yeah, I love that it works this way, but I hate it at the same time. Like, it's great for us because it makes it very easy to distribute our modules. But now, if third-party providers are going to suddenly have to go through an extra hop to enable it, it's not necessarily a good thing for me.
One funny thing that happened, or that the evil provider attack, like when you have a backdoor provider, it was the first time that HashiCorp Security have seen this being done before, and I was amazed because I thought that this could happen like a time ago.
Yeah. So now you've just planted the seed in a whole bunch of script kiddies' minds, and they can't wait to implement that this weekend.
Well, the other thing.
Just imagine
that. The other thing that we haven't adopted as much, but if we did, would prevent a lot of this is the terraform.hcl.lock file.
True. That's a good point. Yeah.
Because the lock file actually specifies which providers and at which versions you're willing to install. And if it's not in that lock file, it won't install it when you Terraform in it.
That's interesting. That should fall into your best practices there, Majin.
For sure. I think I will ping you later, by the way. This is great.
Yeah, definitely. Feel free to ping Matt anytime on that.
Yeah, of course.
Cool. Let's see what next. So that was the Defcon. Defcon 29. Fix that quickly. Attacking Terraform environments. Do check that out if you want more details and a live demo there. All right, then another one that I came across from Anton's awesome Terraform mailing list. If you guys haven't subscribed to that, I recommend checking out weekly.tf. It's a URL, and you can subscribe to it. Where did this go? Here we go. So as we all know, Terraform works together with Terraform Enterprise, and there's a separate protocol exchange there. Here's a prototype or a POC implementation of implementing your own Terraform Enterprise server based on open source. It's strictly a prototype, but I'm excited to see this. This is kind of like what would be a nice augmentation of like in Atlantis or something if this was integrated together with it. I think that with so much interest now in these purpose-built platforms for Terraform, the exorbitant cost of Terraform Cloud, and the larger exposure of this to a developer audience who can build this kind of stuff, I expect to see more solutions in what we're calling tacos, Terraform automation collaboration software. So I think this is really exciting to see. I hope right now it only supports like 3 basic constructs: a remote state backend backed by SQLite database. Yeah, again, not production. Workspace management, and only supports local execution right now. So for anyone not like, this is like where you could set up a backend and point it to your own custom hosted. Hey guys, Jill. All right. Any questions, observations, points on that one before moving on? Cool. Let's see what else I had here. Yeah, so on top of that, also from weekly.tf was, lo and behold, maybe Atlantis, a very nascent Atlantis alternative with a fancier GUI that looks a little bit more like some of the other hosted SaaS alternatives out there. So this presents a node-based service to run your Terraform. And it looks like it has basic user management to start with. Hold on, let me tell these. All right, I'm back. Dog's going nuts. Haven't obviously checked it out yet, but it looks pretty from the screenshots. Has anyone else heard of Gaia?
Yeah, yeah, this is Muhammad. Yeah, I tested actually like 1 month ago. So there is a Docker compose that you can run. The project is not like you can compare with Env0 or Scalar, but
yeah,
it will provide you with a good starting point. But there is like another interesting project. I think I'm gonna paste the link on the Zoom chat. This looks more promising to me because I'm looking into, like, as you know, guys, into like self-service and Terraform with a nice UI. This one looks more. I found this today actually. Nice. It was on the weekly newsletter, and well, I think I'm gonna maybe contribute to the project, like integrate OBA, infra cost, all of these fancy helpers that is a mandatory these days for Terraform. So, and TFSec, maybe Chekhov, maybe Cloud Rails, or there is a bunch of security checks that can be integrated also. But like I said, this one looks promising to me. And I think I already said it before, people now are more looking into like self-service UI for Terraform, where developers can just spin up a new stack and that's it. No one should worry about anything else other than just a few clicks on the UI, right? So this is also can replace Service Catalog by AWS, especially for Terraform, because Service Catalog does not support Terraform directly. It does for CloudFormation, but sadly not for Terraform. Anyway, that's my thoughts on this one. So yeah, these tools are just popping up these days. Yeah. Let's see how this can be integrated. Yeah,
interesting. And I'm just checking here, like some of the GitHub health, like here. Looks like recent commits, but last release was last year. On this one, though, it looks like only one contributor total, with development stalling out right now.
Gaia allow you to have like a module registry more than a module.
Was that a question, or it provides a registry, you're saying? Hello? Anyone? Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you, but
all right.
I don't have an answer.
Okay. These days, with my internet always cutting out, I was wondering. All right, thanks, Matt. All right, we'll move on from that. I think that was really interesting. Well, does anyone else have any other Terraform UIs they've seen out there that are open source? All right. let's move on then. So I believe we talked about this briefly in another office hours, but I'll bring it up again because it segues nicely into another thing I wanted to answer, a question that was brought up. So Terraform is adding a command, or has added a command called Terraform add, with the idea of helping you generate scaffolding within a project based on Terraform resources. And this is this generator pattern. I think it's an essential pattern to have if you are doing anything serious with infrastructure and Terraform. We are looking into implementing our own forms of generators with some of the tools that we have. So this is, one way to look at it. Now, it was presented like the template is okay, but can you? Does it support defining your own templates that you can then use with Terraform add, or is it only built-in ones within the Terraform CLI? Anyone know more about that?
I guess it's just bilobrate for resources. Let's say you want a subnet resources and you just generated instead of copying from Terraform documentation.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'd be curious, like, why they're prioritizing this feature and implementing it into the Terraform core. It must tie into some other tooling that they're building in HashiCorp.
I guess the guy who submitted the BR has like connection or the C executors, so.
Probably. All right. Anything else on that, Michael, you wanted to add?
Well, this is Jonas. Eric, will you just articulate that a little bit more? Like, I understand like the superficial idea of like building something or adding scaffolding, but specifically like I don't really follow like say a specific use case here. Like what would this actually look like in practice?
So I agree that like to me, my interest level on this is like, 0 and using it. But the pattern, what I like about it is the what's the word I'm looking for? The bringing this concept of generators to the Terraform community, I think is a good thing. And I think that this is too nascent in its implementation to be worth anything. I would never probably use this command ever, as opposed to just copying some example out of the docs, if that's what I was trying to do. However, if as our company, we had patterns that we wanted to distribute and that conventions that we wanted people to follow, if we had our own template catalog of things to do like that, and an easy way to invoke those, like basically the whole cookie cutter pattern. If we could do cookie cutter with Terraform in a prescribed way, I think that would be nice. What were you going to say, Matthew, or Matt Calhoun? I thought I heard.
No, I was only going to comment on, I was speculating that they may actually be using this to generate some of their automated documentation, because it basically uses, for all intents and purposes, like Terraform reflection. It parses all the properties that you need and then generates like a sample implementation of it. So I wonder if that's something they're using to keep those, the quick examples like up to date with as they make changes in the resource provider at scale. Yeah, that would be my only guess, but I have no idea.
I could also see it feeding into a UI of some kind, a GUI, like point and click, drag and drop.
Yeah, maybe is that they're extending the VS Code REPL or the integration there to help generate code.
The language server, basically.
Yeah, language server. Yes.
I was thinking it might also be. Sorry, my interrupts are going through.
go ahead, Michael. Sorry, right. you were the one who asked the question. So.
Yeah,
you have the token.
Use cases for this. Yeah, I need the token for the token ring, right? A couple use cases for this. One, like you were saying, Eric, if you have some standardized way of like how to start coding some module or some resource or whatever, then you could use a generator to generate the template for that. And you can give it to somebody and say, hey, run this command, and it'll give you at least the required things that you need to put in here to, get this thing going. But I guess I was looking at it from a couple other perspectives. One, like teaching people to use Terraform. If you could say, well, you need to add a load balancer, and they're like, well, what's a load balancer resource look like? Well, just run Terraform add AWS_LB, and it'll show you what your code should look like, and then you can kind of fill in the blanks from there. And the last case is if you're working with some type of resource that you've never come across before, and number one, if like just reading this PR, it seems like they would only expose the required inputs. So you get to see that at least, but then I would like to see an option where you could say, just give me everything. So you can see all the options available for creating the resource. And it's some of the stuff you might not need or even think about, but you might see something that says like, oh, you need to define this sub block for, I mean, I'm just going to throw it out here. For example, life cycle. Well, you probably never use life cycle, but if you see it and see that you could, customize something that way, you're like, oh man, maybe I could do this. And so it kind of opens up the hood a little bit so you can see what's going on, under the covers.
Or what if we have now hearing you talk made me think about this. So now we'll have a Terraform provider for Terraform that generates Terraform by calling these primitives.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, it's like Inception, the movie.
Yes,
a dream inside a dream.
Yeah. Infrastructure as code inside of infrastructure as code.
Oh, so for one of Michael's points, there's a dash optional flag when you run it that adds all the optional attributes as well.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm just looking at the code. So I see it there.
Cool. All right, let's see what next I have on here. Yeah, just a shout out also to Sheldon. So Sheldon's a longtime SweetOps community member. And he rediscovered that, we have these phenomenal archives of every single message and conversation that's happened in our community since day one. So if you go to archive.sweetops.com, we have the search. You can dig through our archives and all the channels. And it's just a good resource, especially if you run across some esoteric error message and you have no idea what it is. Chances are somebody has already posted and run into it. The whole count of cannot be computed is what put us on the map. So thank you, Sheldon, for that. We'll share a link to that article with some additional pro tips.
Sorry, so not that I want to prolong our other conversation that much, but I was just reading a bunch of the comments, and they seem to be implying that they're going to pair this with Terraform import at some time, so you can do automatic bringing code under or bringing infrastructure that was spun up with ClickOps under management of Terraform automatically at some time in the future.
That makes sense.
So the ad basically will add the scaffolding for that resource, and then they'll fill in the current running values of it, and then use Terraform import to import the actual state of the running thing, and then you'll have like actual Terraform, a mess of spaghetti code, but you'll have it nonetheless at that point.
Yeah, it will be nice.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say,
we're perfectly timed today, everyone. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I've used Terraform import and just created like an empty resource, but then you have to run plan again. And it says, oh, I'm going to delete your empty resource. And, I'm going to put, or rather, the live resource that you just imported has this stuff, but I'm going to delete all that and replace it with your just empty stuff. And then you have to go back to the code fill in all the stuff, So I could see how that may short circuit that step and just kind of expedite it a little bit.
Yeah, combining the two.
I guess for Matt Calhoun, there is a tool from Google called Terraformer, which do spaghetti import, like reverse Terraform engineering.
And there's another one called Terraforming too that does the same thing. But it looks like they're trying to maybe bring that into the core somehow and support that. But I don't know. Yeah. Just reading between the lines of some of the comments that apparently Mark made on the PR. So
yeah, if that's happened, we're gonna lose our jobs for Terraform.
I don't know about that, but
yeah, that's always been the proverbial fear. I don't think we'll ever achieve it, unfortunately. Goal should always be to automate everything, even though we won't be able to. What was that?
Quick question for Eric. How do you do the searching this SweetOps stack archive? Like, how do you do the actual archiving?
Oh, it's a good question. So we evaluated a couple of the open source options out there, and in the end, none of them worked for us because of either changes that Slack made or continued to make. So we hacked together something pretty disgusting in a bunch of obtuse Ruby code that runs in the background and generates the archive every night. It is not something though that we are open sourcing for lots of reasons, but an obvious one is we really depend on this functionality, and it's basically it's using maybe some things we shouldn't be doing in the Slack APIs to get it working. So we just keep it private.
It looks good. That's why I just tested out the archive. Like, it's quite cool. So thank you for having it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Let's see. So yeah, then the last thing I had kind of on my list, I wanted to just shout out. So I just relocated to Texas and decided I was going to buy a fancy new router, and I bought this Ubiquity router, and after 2 months it already burned up. And I decided I'm going to look into this again. This can't be the best thing that's out there. I was pretty unhappy with the Ubiquity router, and as a pretty technical person, there were a lot of things I wanted to do, and it was very difficult to do with a consumer grade router, even though it's ranked top of the line. And I think the same is true with a lot of the equipment out there. And I always wrote off that going the enterprise route would be complicated. I'd have to be running a lot of command line arguments to get it all to work. And then I discovered this thing, the Dream Machine Pro. It was recommended to me by somebody in the industry, and the thing's like $380. That's not much more than a lot of the routers out there. And then you add a couple access points; they're $150 each. And yes, it's pricey, but the Orbi stuff I bought was $1,000 anyways. And here I have enterprise scalable hardware at my home where I can add as many access points as I want. I can add a camera system if I want. I bought the LTE add-on, so I have automatic backup WAN 2, automatic failover when my connection dies. For those of you on office hours, that's been happening a lot lately. So I wanted to get serious about this and try and reduce some of the challenges I have. And working with this, I expected it to be difficult, but it is no harder setting this up than any of the consumer grade stuff. They've done such a phenomenal job on the UX implementing these systems that I can't speak highly enough about it. I don't get paid for this at all. This is just my own testimonial. I've been so happy getting this system set up. Anybody else using this Ubiquity equipment at home for their home office?
Yeah, Patrick here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Patrick.
Yeah, I'm using the USG, and I have friends who've used this Dream Machine, and they've been raving about it too, and said it's even easier to set up. And
yeah,
I may have to take a look at this because I have all Ubiquity stuff, but this Dream Machine looks pretty sweet.
It is. And what else to point out? And it comes with a built-in firewall and all the rules for that, as well as all the standard stuff you would expect.
I'm not sure that I could use this. It only supports 3.5 gigabits per second of throughput.
Yeah, I have to showstopper for me too, boy. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I know. Maybe I don't know if there's some way you can combine them so you can get your full 10 gigabit.
I only accept dark fiber connections.
Cool.
I have my own Sonnet ring running to the CEO here at 10 gigs per second.
You know, Matt, the conversations we've had, that wouldn't surprise me. So
it's not that bad. I do have a gigabit connection though, and I never have pushed the limits of a full gigabit connection. So that was
it's pretty much just for the vanity speed checks, right?
Yeah, it does. My firewall device does a speed check every night and publishes the results, and I usually get about 980 megs down and 880 megs up. Like that's like the average. So at 4 in the morning when no one's using anything else on my network. So it is pretty cool.
Yeah, Matt, you just need a semi-private Plex server that you make available to everyone in office hours, and we'll see what that baby can really do.
Yeah, and then you can actually test how well my firewall works, because I'm sure everyone would be trying to hack me at that point.
Could be. All right, my last announcement is a reoccurring theme here. We are still looking for lots of subcontractors who know Terraform inside and out, and ideally Kubernetes. We work with a lot of pretty awesome startups around Silicon Valley and throughout America, and we've grown tremendously over this past year. Doubled or tripled in size, and having customers that are having more and more interesting requirements. So if you are, looking for the next thing, do reach out to me or Andy and SweetOps, or check out our jobs page, cloudposse.com/jobs. Again, these are subcontracting opportunities. So we look forward to hearing from you. Cool, Q&A time. I think we more or less jumped the gun here and answered a lot of these. One of the questions, though, I didn't answer, and this is why I wanted to talk about the generator pattern first. So I pull this over here. It was posted in the general channel. Ravi, are you on the call today by any chance? Probably not, because it was in just general. All right, yeah. So, well, Ravi was asking a question. It comes up every now and then. Is anybody who's been using now Terraform for a while, there's this wart about your backends and how they get created. Many people use terragrunt. Terragrunt has built-in capability to dynamically provision your Terraform state backend on S3 and presumably other backends as well. And we at Cloud Posse use a different pattern. We terraform our backend with Terraform, but then we have a little wart about how to get it set up and integrated the first time. The question is what are the options to go about that? So one of the options that we have is if you go to docs.cloudposse.com, you go to the tutorials here, your first environment on AWS, and we present an example of using our tool. So we have a tool called Atmos that we use. It's currently written in something called Variant, which is a esoteric choice of language. We are rewriting it. In native Go. That should be done in the next few weeks or so. But the interface will be identical.
It's probably best described as a DSL on top of Go, right? It's a domain specific language.
Well, that is what Variant is.
Yeah,
exactly. That's what I mean. So Variant is like a DSL on top of Go for defining workflows. And yeah, there's a whole other sidebar, like why we chose that, why Eric chose it. I was so excited to finally find a tool that did exactly something I wanted to implement. And then I realized that it wasn't maybe as sweet as I thought it was. No, the tool was amazing. My idea was not as sweet. So I'm glad that we figured that out. I got to scratch the itch, and we're going back to formal Go. Variant is still really rad. I don't want to take anything away from it. It's just we used it for the wrong purpose. We were building our own CLI, and we should have just built our own CLI. We didn't need to have Variant do that in this case. Anyways, that's a sidebar conversation. The real reason I wanted to bring this up is the generator pattern, right? So the backend file, the reason why this whole generator thing is important for this is backends, right? And Terraform backends do not support interpolation. So you cannot put variables in there. And that causes a problem when you want to make your Terraform code more reusable. More dry, yeah, to use better terminology there. So what we have in our Terraform example here, let me jump over into the tutorial. So we have all the tutorials in this GitHub repo here. And if I go into your first AWS environment, we go into stacks, and we go into something like prod. and we have these things we import. Let's go into catalog, globals, backend. All right, so what I'm showing you here is kind of how we define our infrastructure at Cloud Posse. We have this terminology of stacks and imports and globals and components and all that stuff. And it allows us to move the architecture that you're designing out of your Terraform code. So your Terraform code is really just defining your building blocks, and then your stacks and components define your architecture, and then it's totally extensible, and you can define your architecture any number of ways without writing a single line of Terraform code. Well, one of the things that we support in here is this concept of a Terraform backend. And this here is actually the structure of a backend in Terraform in YAML format. And let's remember that Terraform code is backwards compatible with JSON. So in our use case, what we do is then we just serialize this backend to a JSON file, and we commit that to source control. And that's what we have for our generator. So that's where here we have backend generate. So in our case, we would run Terraform, Atmos Terraform backend generate, and this would write the backend configuration to some components.
Yeah. And I can say it's similar to what terragrunt does. What terragrunt does is it uses the terragrunt HCL to define some of those things, do some rudimentary interpolation if you want to do that, and then it just in time writes that file to the .terraform directory when it pulls down all the modules. So same idea.
Yeah, same idea. And you know, in this rewrite of Atmos, you know, maybe we add just in time as a enhancement. Our justification for avoiding the just in time was we wanted to have a copy of the Terraform code in Git that was executable with just pure Terraform. That our tool Atmos is great, it helps, but it shouldn't be required. And that was the motivation for making it more explicit that we generate the backend and we commit it versus doing the just in time. Both are cool. All right, so that's the generator pattern for Terraform backends and making it dry. Anybody else have any suggestions for how they keep their, well, there's another great way to keep them dry. We started using it. So in Terraform, you can define your backend. It doesn't support interpolation, but it does support, Terraform has a generic escape hatch, which is specifying the environment variable, tflint. So you can specify the backend arguments in an environment variable that is consumed at runtime by Terraform the CLI. Those are really the only three options I've seen out there: generators, terragrunt, or using the environment variables. I'd say the environment variable approach is only feasible if you already have some kind of a task runner in your paradigm, so that you have like make or what's it, go task or something like that, because having to specify, of course, all those arguments to run a Terraform init gets old very quickly.
Yeah, I can add comments on this one. I'm using the task file, which is make file alternative written in Go.
Mm-hmm.
So I paste a link on my GitHub so anyone can check that. There is a Terraform file there, and there is like a series of patterns that you can follow for different projects. It's in Zoom chat. So yeah, I guess yeah, he can take a look at that. And also Sheldon has done a great job also with task file for Terraform. I think he has a couple of links that he can share also. So if you go to the Terraform folder and
wait, go to your here, go to Terraform. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on Terraform folder, task file. See, so you can pass variables here and then just run simple workflow. So I guess task file is much more easier for like beginners, and at the end they can reach your level with writing their own tool, right? So for beginners, I guess this
exactly.
is good. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's like, you know, Cloud Posse invested a obscene amount of time in makefiles, and I guess it's a little bit because, you know, my background was originally writing makefiles for C and C++, and it just made sense. Hey, it's kind of cool. We're compiling our infrastructure with make. But make is a very esoteric way of writing tasks. It looks relatively intuitive, but the way it executes is not intuitive for a lot of beginners. So task file, I think, makes a lot of sense as an alternative. It also looks very similar to, so Variant has two versions. There's Variant V1 by Mumoshu, and then there's just Variant. So we started with Variant, which looked a lot like task file. Same structure, a little bit more feature rich, but therefore a little bit more complicated again, how to use. So what's nice about task file is it strikes a nice balance of functionality, usability, but not so extensible that you can do anything with it and make something very complicated.
Quick question, is task file, like the Go task file, is it similar to like the way people use their dot files? Somehow?
No, not necessarily. No, dot files, I mean, when you say dot, that's a little,
yeah,
I mean, dot, yeah. I guess it supports the concept of its own dot file to read settings in. But task file is a lot more analogous to a make file.
No, I mean like when you use, I don't know, like you have a lot of commands and you would like to have a shortcut for them, and you just use like dot files to and have it like with your ZSH profile. Is it similar somehow?
No, actually it's not. So it's a good question, and it's good to help clear that up. So we built the first version of Atmos in a tool like task file. That tool just happens to be a lot more feature rich, but it's also pretty, like I was saying, esoteric. It's a little bit unusual of a choice that nobody knows how to use it, so that it impacts adoption. So we are rewriting Atmos in Go, but the purpose of Atmos is not to be a task runner at this time. The purpose is for Atmos to be a way for us to define our settings in a standardized way that can be used across tool chains. You would use task file or Go task with Atmos together with, or make file with Atmos, or in our case, Spacelift with our
to be fair though, Eric, I mean, you could make the argument that Atmos is a task runner, because
that is true.
Really what it's doing is just like running Terraform, like at least the Atmos Terraform commands. It's running Terraform in certain directories with certain options, with certain, you know, it's basically, it's doing like a task runner plus stuff.
It's doing it. To be entirely fair, it's like an opinionated task runner for Terraform, but not at this time designed to replace a general purpose task runner.
Yeah. Sure.
And two things I do see it going into a route would be melding functionality similar possibly to Go task, as well as having our own concept of generators built into the tool. And I find generators absolutely required, because at the end of the day, tools are never going to do everything we want them to do, but we can often generate the configuration that we want if we want to, without having to wait 1 year, 2 years for the maintainers to add that functionality. All right, well, we got 10 more minutes here. Let's see if more questions came in through Slack here.
Hey, Eric, this is Oliver. I just want to bring up one maybe interesting point about the backend configuration. I just noticed recently, I think I saw a blog post on from HashiCorp or something about partial configuration of backends, and this was new to me. I'm pretty sure that wasn't, you know, for instance, in Terraform 0.11. I'm not sure exactly when that came up. but at least, I mean, I haven't used it, but the neat thing is that it allows you to factor out some of the parameters of the backend.
Yeah.
So you can basically have like a backend, an empty backend block, and then you can define the body of it with some JSON, which at least opens it up a little bit more to some configuration.
Yeah, so basically Terraform will deep merge those backend configuration blocks. That's correct, right?
Yeah, it's something like that. I'd have to look again. It's been a while since I looked at that partial configuration. I don't know if it does a deep merge. I'd have to look again, but yeah, when I saw that, it certainly was quite interesting.
Oh, sorry. Somebody is unmuted there. I couldn't see who that was fast enough. All right. Any other questions or comments on the state backend?
Yeah, I have a question on office hours. So
yeah, go for it, Mohammed.
Yeah, okay. So I have like 826 resources on AWS account, and only almost 250 are on the state file. So they're like 600 resources out of the state file. So is there anyone? I'm starting importing manually with Terraform import. I even write a Python script to generate Terraform import commands for me. But is there anyone who completed this?
Basically, you want to decompose your Terralith into smaller Terraform states so that it's not all in one. Yeah. I think. Well, yeah, Matt, go.
I want to make sure that I understood, though. I think he actually was saying that of the 800 resources in his account, only 250 of them are actually under Terraform control.
Oh,
actually, he actually wants to do what we were talking about earlier, like with terraforming or the like import existing infrastructure.
Yeah. There's
no easy way.
There's no easy way. We do have another office hours segment where we talk a little bit more in depth on these tools, including Terraformer. I
tested Terraformer. Sorry to interrupt you, Eric. I tested already, but it seems like it supports a subset of AWS resources and services, so it's not helping any that much. So I'm not sure. I think TF query by Mazen, I tested it like a query, SQL query on the state file for the remaining resources, but the problem with the message, 600 resources there. So yeah, maybe no other way than importing manually, and spend the whole weekend doing it.
Yeah.
It's really hard. One way, like, I was working on something similar, not as huge as this one, but is I was using a tool called AWS Sets. I will post the link on the chat, and this one would enumerate like the resources on the AWS account, and then from there it would, and then we categorize them as like per groups, like I don't know, per IAM, S3, and per service. And then I would try to import them in bulk as groups, like try to write all of the IAM resources in bulk and then go to the S3 and then try to import them. It made it a bit easier, but of course it's really painful to do all this.
Yeah, sounds like a plan, I guess. Okay, please send the link and I can take it. Thank you.
For sure.
All right. Well, in the last 5 minutes, any other questions we can help answer on the call today? I see we do have some chat in the comments.
Let me just say one quick question. Not question, but a comment. But I'm pretty sure, I forget the name of it, but I'm pretty sure Anton has some sort of project that he wrote that will look at like an AWS account and like reverse engineer it to Terraform. So maybe it's worth reaching out to him as well.
Yeah, I think he was working on something.
I remember seeing it was a UI based thing.
Yeah. I think it was more of a way to get it into what is that platform that lets you generate those isomorphic AWS diagrams?
Oh, yeah. Cloud. I know.
Yeah. So actually, what was the other way? What he developed was a cool tool. You could develop your infrastructure using that tool, and then it would convert it to Terraform code for you.
Well, it's interesting because that tool can actually import from your running AWS account.
Oh,
so
so
there you go.
Yeah. All right, that's kind of clever.
I can't remember the name. I used that tool like a lot before, and I'm blanking out on the name of it right now.
So to be honest, though, I think it was more opinionated than that. It was designed to use specific community modules and work with terragrunt and some stuff like that. But yeah, it was an interesting project. All right, let's see here. Just looking through the Zoom chat here, seeing if there was any question I missed.
I was just going to follow up on my tflint question. So I did get it to, or realize what I needed to do to configure it to check for specific tags, but I still haven't seen like any, I guess, good tutorials or pointers on how to develop a true, user developed plugin for how to, add it to the tflint run.
Yeah, so I don't know anything actually about tflint and plugins. Is it kind of like the whole Git plugin system? I think they call it Porcelain or something, where they provide a plugin in. Oh, okay. So you can just write your plugin in any language and it just shells out to it.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, but I just haven't found a good head start on how to get it going.
Okay.
And with tflint, you explicitly have to opt into whatever rules you want it to run. So you actually have to say like tflint, like -- enable rule, whatever. Like
that's the part that I was missing.
Yeah. If anyone's interested, I run tflint locally on all the stuff. When I develop it, I'll drop my my command that I run. I have an alias for it, so I just dropped it into office hours. That's the command that I run all the time and that seems to catch most of the stuff that I miss. So.
Very cool. Well, thanks, Matt. Yeah, go share that in the SweetOps Slack office hours channel. With that, I think we're basically out of time for today. I'm going to start to wrap things up here. So just a reminder, we will post a recording of today's session to the YouTube, to our YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/c/cloudposse. You'll also be able to find outtakes from our other office hours specific segments focused on individual conversations that were interesting. If you haven't already, go ahead and register for next week's office hours by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. Also, as I say that, I regret that I forgot to announce again that next week we have a special edition of office hours. We do have Taylor Dolezal joining us one more time to this time do a demo of HashiCorp Boundary. Boundary is their zero trust remote access proxy system. So I'm really excited to get that demo. So check us out next week for that. Again, if you are interested in working with Cloud Posse, do check out our jobs page. Go to cloudposse.com/jobs. Again, cloudposse.com/jobs, and look forward to talking with you. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.